is, unless you can give me an example of how mercy can be displayed without a subject, then you are acknowledging that Allah requires a subject to display His mercy, and that means there is a dependence.
Those attributes and those qualities don't apply to Allah when He shows raham and mercy to His creation. Then to make an analogy of it being something that is ununderstandable in the worldly sense, then therefore can't apply to God.
I am yet to meet the Muslim that can show me where Muhammad gives the definitions of the 99 names of Allah. Can you show me where Muhammad tells you what al-warith means?
The words have to be analysed here. The word warith, the word rahman. You can't apply a human linguistic understanding of dependency and codependency. It doesn't work like that. Number two, the fact that God does do that and that Allah does show mercy to His creation after bringing them to existence is all within the remit of mercy.
Okay,
that
so,
can't be
so show me where the Qur'an defines al-warith then. So the Arabic.
But he was explaining to the Arabic.
So I've got the Arabic explained right here.
Okay, go ahead.
By an Islamic website.
Okay, go ahead.
Al-warith, which has the classical Arabic connotations to inherit, to be an heir, a survivor, to be the owner or sustainer after someone.
Okay.
So that's what the Arabic is saying about Allah.
Okay.
Right. That Arabic simply does not make sense.
As he explains to you, the meaning of that word is
Yes.
not just simply inheritor.
What does it mean?
I don't know. I'm not Arab. I'm not Arab.
I've got it here. I've got the Arabic here. Would you like to jump in, sir?
Jump in, brother. Jump in, inshallah.
The one who remains after all creation has perished.
There's no problem with that at
The
all.
one to whom all returns.
Yeah.
Right.
So what you're trying to say to me is
Returns from who?
Returns from so far. For example, in this dunya, Allah has given you possessions. So at the end of it, it will all return back to Allah.
But doesn't Allah already own those possessions?
Of course He does.
So how can He inherit them?
Look, I will say one thing. The word in Arabic, all Arabic words come from three triliteral roots, right?
Yeah.
So the word here
Come closer,
is,
brother,
is,
come closer.
is waratha, right?
Yeah.
Now the word warith is one of Allah's name. It's a hyperbole. It means extreme, right? Extreme form of whatever it is. And in this case, it means waratha has different meanings. I'll give you an example of where the word warith has been used. Al-ulama are warathatul anbiya. This means that the scholars are inheritors of the Prophet.
Yeah.
What that means is that the prophets leave behind something, or
Yes.
they are used by someone else as well. That
Yeah.
doesn't presuppose that the knowledge that came from the prophets or the scholars now own something that was there previously. It was there previously. It can be transferred. Now, Allah's names are obviously unique to God, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, they're not meant in the linguistic or liturgical sense as they are for common people. So when you say inheritor, it obviously means if I inherit from you, you no longer have it.
Yeah.
And I'm dependent on this person giving it to me.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily true for the names of God. For example, God is Rahim, right?
Yeah.
God is merciful.
Yeah.
Does that mean that now God's mercy is dependent on someone else being or showing mercy or having mercy? For example, if I'm merciful, I'm dependent on that person to show mercy too. You can only show mercy. It's an intransitive verb.
Yeah.
It's something that is done upon someone else.
Yes, exactly.
So if you say that you are merciful,
Yeah.
for you and me to be merciful, that means we are dependent on something else to show mercy too.
Agreed.
However, with God is not dependent on the creature to show mercy.
Okay.
That is God's mercy in itself, that the creature has come into existence and that God is able to manifest His magnificence, His mercy, and His attributes upon that thing.
May I reply?
It's not a
One-to-one correlation.
It's not a one-to-one correlation, and it's not a dependent/codependent relationship.
Okay, allow me to reply to the. Is it all right if I reply?
Go ahead.
Okay, so you use the analogy of someone, the ulama inheriting the knowledge of the Prophet.
Yeah.
The problem with that analogy to your argument is that obviously that means that there is a possession of the Prophet and then a possession of the ulama. That means in the terms of the knowledge, it's gone from one to the other. The reality is that the contradiction that I'm pointing out here is that Allah is already described as Al-Malaki, which means that He already owns everything, which means that there's nothing for Him to inherit. It is a contradiction in terms. Now, then you argued, your next argument, and I don't think your analogy escapes that problem. I actually think that it just doubles down on the contradiction that I've presented. Your next argument was to say that this language shouldn't be taken as literal. But the problem with that is that if language doesn't have any common usage, when Muhammad gives a revelation, the Qur'an, and the Qur'an is meant to be clear guidance and light. Remember, that's how the Qur'an describes itself, as clear guidance and explaining all things. That's what the Qur'an describes itself as being. If in the next breath the Muslim scholars that come later are saying that the words of the Qur'an can't be taken as they are heard, then that means, let me finish, that means that the Qur'an's self-description is flawed, right? And the third problem is that if you said that Allah doesn't depend on his creatures for anything, including his mercy. But this is actually another contradiction within the descriptions of Allah. Allah is Al-Rahman. Mercy requires a subject, but Allah is also described as Al-Ghaniya. Al-Ghaniya means that Allah is free from all dependence. But mercy by its very nature requires a subject, which means that Al-Rahman means that Allah is not Al-Ghaniya.
Well, no. Okay, I'll retort now. The first point you mentioned is that the Quranic verses need interpretation, or something to that effect, and that they're not clear. They're not what you said was clear proofs. Again, we need to have terminology defined here. Number one, the Quranic verses themselves are open for limited interpretations, and I'll tell you why that is. The words of the Quran haven't changed. The root words, like I said to you, like in English, you have a root word. In Arabic, it's a lot more entrenched and it's a lot more specific. So, for example, the root words malak, Mim, Lam and Kaf in Arabic language. That's the same word whether you read it one translation or another translation. The root is the same. So there's a finite number of interpretations. It's not unlimited, number one. Number two, interpretations and tafsir, as we call it, or commentaries, is not a weakness of the Quran. It's actually a way of expounding and allowing a deeper understanding. It's also applicable and understandable for the common man to use, because that's why the Quran is considered to be absolute. It's something that is accessible to the layman, yet there's enough intricacies and detail that if you want to further study it, you can. Hence why the need for tafsir, the allowance for linguistic analyses of the Quran. But again, they are finite and they're within a certain boundary. That doesn't change the meaning of the verse into something contradictory. You're saying now the names of God are themselves contradictory, or they are antithesis of each other.
That's my thesis. Yes, the Islamic theology and therefore Islamic spirituality, which is the 99 names, has contradictions within it, and we've got two examples on the table.
Okay.
Al-Maliki al-Warith,
okay.
Al-Ghaniya al-Rahman.
Yeah. Now, first thing is that, again, the words have to be analyzed here. The word Warith, the word Rahman. You can't apply a human linguistic understanding of dependency and codependency. It doesn't work like that. Warith and the meaning of inheritor and inheritance, that doesn't apply in the common way that it does to human beings, because then you're presupposing that it's a dependence on something else. Now, you're right, there was no creation at one time in Islamic theology, and God created it. That's why there's a saying of God that I was a hidden treasure, and I created creation to manifest, and this is the wording, to manifest the blessings or the favors of God. So this is within the realm of Allah's creation, that He created creation in order to disseminate these attributes of His. It's not on the basis of a weakness, it's not on the basis of reciprocity, and it's on the basis of need.
Can I reply to that?
I'll just say one thing. If you have children, for example, that doesn't presuppose that you're weak, or that you now need something else to continue your lineage based on your weakness or your mortality.
Can I reply to that now?
Okay, go ahead.
Because it seems to me that none of this is escaping my criticism.
Which is?
Well, firstly, you've now added yet another example of Allah's dependence because you've just said that Allah created to demonstrate His power. The words to those effect. I don't want to misquote you, and those may not be your exact words, but it was along those lines of that by the act of creation, it was to demonstrate something or to display something, which contradicts the very idea. Whenever an action has a subject, like mercy, it contradicts the idea of total independence, which is what is affirmed by Muslim scholars when they talk about Al-Ghaniya. Now, I'm not being unfair there, am I? That is what Muslims talk about when they talk about Al-Ghaniya. They say a complete lack of dependence.
Lack of the need of dependence.
No.
Need of dependence.
So we can pull it up what they say. You can pull up what they say.
But let me just go to your supposition of what you're saying. The supposition what you're saying with these names is that you're applying human analogy to it. Number one, you're assuming, because there's an assumption there. The assumption is that there is a need for God to do this in order to manifest these qualities. There's no need. If you have children, for example, or you do something, there's a need for you based on character, personality flaws, arrogance, pride, self-centeredness. These aren't the reasons why God does the things that he does.
Okay, but that is not consequential to my argument. Your counter argument ignores completely what my argument is.
Well,
my argument is that there are
no.
My argument is the rational contradictions. Now, rational contradictions are not comparing Allah to the created. Rational contradictions are simply that they are logically contradictory statements about a subject. No. So the subject in this instance is the Qur'an statement about Allah. The Qur'an states Allah is Al-Ghaniya. The Qur'an states that Allah is Al-Rahman.
Yes.
You have already identified in this conversation,
yes,
and I'm sure you're going to do it again, that mercy requires a subject. If mercy requires a subject,
yes,
then by definition,
right,
Allah is not Al-Ghaniya, because there is a codependence for the expression of his mercy.
No, but
like there is a dependence on creation to display his power.
I know, but that doesn't mean that
and that's contradictory.
There's not a dependence, because that is within the realm of God's creation. For God to create something and manifest his mercy on that creation is not showing the dependence of God upon the creation, it's showing the dependence of the creation upon God.
So
you're making the circular argument that because God's created it in the first place, therefore God is now becoming weak because he needs that thing.
I never mentioned weak. You keep throwing this word weak in there. I've never said
but you're
it.
saying dependence then, yeah? Because you're saying your argument is of transitive and intransitive. The fact that mercy is something that requires something to manifest mercy on.
You're confusing.
No, but that's what you said.
No. You are confusing the words dependence and the words weakness.
So what are you saying?
I am not saying a man whose heart is filled with love,
right,
doesn't have any weakness in him for loving someone else.
Okay.
But he does require someone else to love.
Okay.
Right. So the confusion between dependence and weakness,
right,
we've now put out of this conversation.
Okay.
Because
so what's your point?
Yeah. So my point is, there are rational, logical, non sequitur statements,
right,
that are all given to the same subject,
yes,
in the Quran, meaning that there are contradictory statements,
okay,
in the Quran about Allah. Now let me go into my point. For you to get out of this issue, the way that you need to get out of this issue is to show me how someone can display his mercy without a subject.
Meaning something to manifest their mercy on.
Yeah, because mercy is by definition a transactional relation, is it not?
Okay. So
what is mercy? Give me an example of mercy.
It's similar to what you're saying. Yes, I agree, but I still don't understand how that contradicts the fact that if God is showing mercy upon a creation that he initially created himself,
yes,
then that shows a certain amount of, what was the word that you used?
So, right.
That shows a certain
dependence.
amount of dependence.
Yes.
Yeah, because dependence means that, well, what does dependence mean? Now let's break down the word dependence. If you use the word dependent, right, that means that there's weakness.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
We just demonstrated that it doesn't.
No, but dependence means that you need something else in order to fulfill something upon yourself.
No, weakness does not mean that. Dependence means that, but not weakness.
Okay, but that's the word.
A person can be weak in many things.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're having another fight. Sorry, bro. Yeah. Another fight at Speaker's Corner. It would appear that our little thug has once again
let's take a break there.
Picked a fight.
Let's take a break there.
I just want to say I really appreciate your demeanour and the way that you have a conversation.
Well. No, you're too. I do appreciate it. But I think let's take a break.
Are you wanting to stop?
I think so. Just for now.
We can continue our conversation if you want. So my point is, like,
one more.
I want to get this clear. I am not suggesting that this logical non sequitur means that I'm accusing Allah of weakness.
Okay.
I accept that nothing in Islamic theology teaches that Allah is weak.
But it's dependence
okay?
the issue is.
But dependence it is not connected to weakness. A person can be strong and still dependent.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you already have acknowledged that, particularly for relational transactions, that by necessity and that's the key word in all of this, by necessity, there must be another. In other words, we cannot conceive of something without the other, which means that Allah, by necessity, to express His mercy requires a subject.
Now,
and that is dependence, which contradicts al-Ghaniya.
Okay, now my only issue with that is that when you look at the word mercy, you talk about dependence, right? Dependence does imply a certain amount of weakness. And I'll tell you why I'm not letting go of those two things. When you say something is dependent on something else, you look at any example of dependence, a child is dependent on his parents, right? That is because of and out of need, because the child is weak and it cannot survive in itself. Now, when you're saying that the parent is now showing mercy towards that child, it is out of weakness, the weakness of love, the weakness of the fact that it needs necessitates the fact that that parent now needs to take care of that child, otherwise they would be labeled as criminal people or social services recording, or there could be repercussions. You can't apply that analogy now of dependence and needing reciprocity or needing a subject to manifest mercy to God. Because first of all, those relations and that comparison and that word, it doesn't even apply to God. There's no need and there's no requirement for the mercy to be manifested on creation, i.e. there was no original dependence on God to do this. Number one. Wait, let me finish. Number two, the fact that God does do that and that Allah does show mercy to His creation after bringing them to existence is all within the remit of mercy. It's not that that now has been created, therefore Allah is now dependent on them to manifest His mercy. Otherwise, God didn't have any obligation to have children or to do anything else, especially like in Christian theology,
Can I
or how
reply
people
to
do. So, just one thing. Your idea and your analogy of dependence in the linguistic understanding on worldly creation can't apply to God, because you're not applying, because even the words of, even the names of God, you're saying wari, warith and ghani, these are hyperbolized qualities and attributes of God, right? Number one. Number two.
No, you're making now a separate.
All right.
Can I just reply to those 2 points?
Go ahead.
The first point, there is a hadith, and I'm sure we can pull it up. Can we pull up the hadith where...
Well, I can't respond to any hadith that's pulled up. Let's stick with the topic of discussion.
I'm going... Let me... No. Can we pull up the hadith where Muhammad says that Allah says that if you had not sinned, He would get rid of you and then create another creation that would sin so that He could display His mercy. So in that hadith that we're going to pull up for you with the reference, in that hadith, Allah is saying literally that if you hadn't sinned, I would have got rid of you, created something that would sin so that I could show my mercy. In other words, Allah is acknowledging the dependence, that He needs creation to show His mercy.
Where's the word need?
Well, one second, I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
Please don't interrupt me.
Okay.
So that addresses your first point. Because your texts are telling you that Allah is dependent for the transactional relationship. Second point. I kind of forgot what your second point was because you interrupted me. But so I'll just sort of recapitulate. If Allah is clearly requiring a subject for mercy, and in your example you talked about women and children showing their love. Firstly, I dismiss your characterization that love is weakness. Love is not weakness. Love is strength. But what I would say to you is that your very examples demonstrate my point. You can't even conceive of mercy without two parties. And that means that within the very heart of Islamic theology is the requirement, the necessity of something else other than Allah for Allah to display His attributes, and that contradicts the idea that Allah is completely free from any kind of dependence.
Okay, so response to that is, number one, that there's no obligation for us to even be in existence. Our existence and coming into being is in itself the greatest manifestation of God's mercy, of Allah's mercy in the first place. That's number one, because there is no onus on Allah to do anything, and there was nothing that was a factor which was influencing Allah to do whatever Allah decides to do, as we know. Number one. Number two, so the fact that we are even existing is in itself a manifestation of God's mercy. Number one. Number two. Number three, you're saying that there's still the issue integral in this hadith or whichever the hadith you quote. Number one, the necessity and need of God creating creation in order to manifest mercy is not quoted in that hadith, and it's not quoted within those names.
So you know it.
I know what?
So you know the hadith.
I'm familiar with it, but I can't go into detailed tafsir. But I will say one
Okay.
thing. I will say one thing. That hadith does not mention the need and necessity.
No.
Need,
What it says.
No, let me finish. Now, because you're interrupting me.
Okay,
but
fair
now
enough.
you're interrupting me. Okay, so number one, number three. I done number two, three. So those hadith, these verses of the Quran and these names, you cannot deduce or infer from that necessary dependence of God for these attributes. The fact that we are created is a manifestation of God's mercy. Now,
Thank you.
is that mercy something that is dependent on us? No.
Can it
God
be
could-
expressed without us?
in any way that Allah wishes, absolutely.
Okay, so
and when you say us, what do you mean by us?
Wait,
Human beings,
one
creation?
second. Let's do this logically, because remember, the accusation is about a logical non sequitur statements within the Quran.
Right.
So we're talking just about. Oh dear.
Chance with an alleged threat to kill Boris Johnson.
Right.
The government, Boris.
So the point is, the subject of our conversation is Allah. The subject of the Quran's discourse is Allah. If I were to describe you or anything else in a contradictory way, you would point out the contradiction. Muslims come to the park all the time, trying to attack and failing the Christian faith by what they say are contradictions. So you have established these principles in your polemics against the Christian faith. They are simply now being applied to what the Quran is saying about Allah. The reality is, unless you can give me an example of how mercy can be displayed without a subject, then you are acknowledging that Allah requires a subject to display His mercy, and that means there is a dependence.
Okay, first thing is to rebuke your first point. People aren't here to criticize and condemn Christianity
They do it all
or
the time.
to make certain things like that. You're saying you've done that. I haven't done anything
I never.
like that.
Sorry, when I say you, I meant
Well,
the
then-
wider dawati.
That's not me, and I don't know of anyone that does that here anyway.
I could
That's
name a
number
few.
two. Then you can do that separately. Number two, you're saying give an example of where the dependence of God is not manifested by the fact that His need to creation.
No, I didn't say that.
What was your exact question then?
My exact question was,
Yeah.
give me an example
Yeah.
of mercy that does not require a subject.
In this world, can't think of one.
There you go.
But this is not this worldly that we're talking about. It's about God. And God's attributes are fundamentally, as I said, hyperbolized, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, they're manifested in a way that is not necessarily dependent as we are dependent when we show mercy to our creation. You say that's a sign of weakness. I didn't say
I
that.
never, and what, never once,
you
one
said-
second,
no, you accused
never
me.
once did I say
You
that
did.
this is a sign of
No,
weakness.
you said to
never
me
once.
that I said is a sign of weakness. I know love is
I
a
didn't.
sign of strength. You did.
No, you-
I said love is a
okay,
sign of
people
strength,
can
but
decide.
love is also a sign of dependence and weakness. Not weakness in the sense of a failing weakness, but in the sense that you are therefore dependent on something else to show love. Now, for humanistic reasons, why do we show love? Why do we show mercy? Because it's something that's inherent. It's a reciprocity between the subject that you're showing mercy. You're dependent on that. There's some sort of personal gain. Because those attributes and those qualities don't apply to Allah when He shows raham and mercy to His creation, then to make an analogy of it being something that is ununderstandable in the worldly sense, then therefore can't apply to God.
No.
Because the premise is wrong. And this is my key objection to what you're saying. The premises that you're presenting for two are not analogous with each other. Mercy in this world, yes, it shows dependence, it shows reciprocity, it shows need.
Yep.
That doesn't apply to God.
Yeah.
Because God doesn't show mercy in the way that we do.
Okay.
Yes, us showing mercy is actually a reflection of God Himself as well.
Can I reply to that?
Well, okay, yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
because
it's the last
you've
one.
already, okay, that's fine. And I really appreciate, it is. I really do appreciate the calm and civilized conduct. Unfortunately, we had an example earlier of Shamsi just bursting into a conversation. Allah doesn't own the bag, but He does own the matter. He does own the matter. But one second. Oh, Shamsi, why don't you have a conversation? Why don't you have a conversation, Shamsi, rather than being rude? And I really appreciate that you've not been like Shamsi. But I want to point out that in the course of your reply, you admitted the point, which is that you can't even conceive of an example of mercy without a subject, which means that within your understanding of Allah's mercy, intrinsically, buried deep in the heart of Allah's, of your understanding of Allah, is the fact that Allah requires a dependency to show His mercy. I just
said that.
what? No.
You're saying
People,
you said
people,
acknowledge that.
people can make their
I
own
never
mind up.
said that. I
People
never
can
said
make their own mind.
dependency. That's
I
what
just,
you're
I just want
inferring.
to, I just want to read the hadith that's in question. It's from Sahih al-Muslim, 2749. By him whose hand is my life, if you were not to commit sin, Allah would sweep you out of existence, and He would replace you by those who would commit sin and seek forgiveness from Allah, and He would have pardoned them. So in other words, He's getting rid, he's hypothetically, in a thought experiment, getting rid of a sinless creation to create a creation that would sin so that He could show His mercy.
So what's that proving?
It's showing dependence.
No, it's not. Because that's a hypothetical situation, number one. Number two, nowhere in the hadith, if you look at the Arabic, is the word necessity used, which is the darura, or dependency. That's not used
So
in
back,
any of that
back
hadith.
to the question, show me an example of mercy without a subject.
Without a subject?
Yeah.
What, in this world?
Yeah.
Well, why is that necessarily going to prove your point of God needing that?
Because Allah,
Yeah.
Allah's mercy is displayed in this world, is it not?
Yes, it is, but there's no
And He is
obligation.
described as Al-Rahman for showing His mercy in this world, is He not?
No, the quality of attribute of Rahman isn't dependent on the fact that He's created us. These are attributes of God before existence as well.
How does He show it?
How does He show what?
How does He show His mercy?
Well, in this world,
Yeah.
in our time of creation,
Yeah.
when we've been created, is through the fact that we exist.
If there was no creation, could He
Right.
show His mercy?
These are hypothetical situations. Why could God not show it? They've been creations.
Who would He show it to?
In our existence, we are the later line of creation that God has created.
Who
They
would-
have been creation before Him.
So that
Before us.
but that just replaces one dependency with another one.
Okay, but that doesn't presuppose the fact that you have those qualities and attributes. Just because there's no one there to necessarily manifest it on, doesn't mean that those qualities are not present in you.
And
or that
the
they're not
argument is not about whether God has the attribute.
there. It's whether or how they manifest it.
It's how it's manifested.
Yeah.
And the critique is
Yeah.
that you are upholding two contradictory statements.
That-
First
Ghani,
statement
yeah.
is that He is Al-Ghani,
Yeah.
which means that He is free of any dependence whatsoever.
Yes.
I'm not being unfair there, am I?
Well, no, that's the name of what he means.
Right. So I'm right in what I'm saying.
I know, but what you're trying to say, I get what
But
you're trying to say.
but then we can't even conceive of Allah displaying His mercy without a subject, which means that contradicts Al-Ghani, because that means that there is something there by necessity and requirement.
Not necessarily, and I'll tell you
Well,
why.
explain how.
Well, because there's two or three ways to look at this. Number one, as I said, the manifestation of
Can we
God's-
take them in turn? Like when you give number one, number two, number three, can I
Yeah.
take them in turn?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
but firstly, the manifestation of God's mercy is not dependent on the creation. That could be manifested in any way that God wanted to do it. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a possibility that God showed it in a way that we don't know, right? This is known in Allah's knowledge. But yes, creation came into existence and God manifested His mercy in one way upon us as creation in numerous different ways. That does not necessitate dependency.
Okay, can I reply to that bit?
Yeah, but I know why. Let me finish my point.
Okay.
So I get the rebuttal that's going to come. That then how is that manifested? If it's an attribute of God's, then there must be another way that can be manifested without dependence on us. And I disagree with that because, as I said, if you manifest mercy in a way on a creation, that is yourself showing mercy to that creation by the fact that it's come into existence. Just because it wasn't there doesn't mean that you need something to manifest that mercy on, or that it's not an attribute of yours. And it doesn't necessarily necessitate that you have to manifest that mercy either.
Okay, can I sorry,
one second.
Can I reply
You
to
can-
those points?
I'll give you one.
You're making a number of points.
I'm not, but this is the last thing. This is a point that you can redress in your rebuttal. You can be merciful, and you have a quality of mercy in you. Yeah. Do you have to necessarily manifest that on something else?
Okay, can I reply that? So the argument is not about whether Allah has the attribute of Al-Rahman. The argument is not about whether Allah must express His mercy.
Okay.
So those are red herrings. They've actually got nothing to do with the critique at all.
It's the manifestation.
You've just thrown them out there, but they're not part of the critique at all. The critique is firmly and simply about two contradictory statements. Contradictory statement number one, Allah is free of any kind of dependence. Contradictory statement number two, to display His mercy requires a subject.
No, I disagree with that.
Mercy requires a subject. You can't even think of an example of mercy without a subject, proving the point. Meaning that within Islamic theology, there are contradictory statements about Allah. Another example, going back to the first one, and then maybe we should sort of wrap this up unless you've got some really knockdown statement. Allah is Al-Warith. Allah is Al-Maliki. If Allah owns everything, there is nothing for him to inherit. If he is Al-Warith, then that means there is something for him to inherit. But if he owns everything, he can't inherit what he already owns.
Yeah, no, this now requires Arabic linguistics, which I'm not going to get into.
Am I wrong in saying that the root of the Arabic word, waritha, is connected to the idea of inheritance?
Yeah, but not inheritance.
Am I wrong?
No, because the word inheritance is a translation, and I can't say that it's applicable in the same way. Because what you're doing is you're applying humanistic understanding of these terminologies to a being which supersedes human understanding.
Yeah,
supersedes human application.
The classical Muslim understanding is that Al-Warith merely means that Allah survives everything else.
Right.
But that isn't an inheritor. An inheritor takes possession of something he doesn't own.
I'm saying, so to apply the linguistic meaning in common vernacular usage in English is not really right, because English.
But this is common Arabic enunciation.
It's not common. It's not common.
It's common. This is the root of the Arabic word. You acknowledged it yourself.
Warith and mirath and these words, there's different, as I said, hyperbolic forms of it, and the meaning when it comes to God's attributes is more deep and more intense and needs more interpretation. I can't say it on camera and say that that's exactly what the meaning is, and it contradicts that.
Okay.
Rahman is
I want to come to this interpretation thing, because I think we
I think I'm
kind
going to wrap it up there, but go ahead.
Okay, if you had stayed a bit longer, I would have liked to have moved on to
things like what?
the right of the scholars to interpret. Because my thing is,
I'd like to have a discussion about something else. Sorry.
Yeah, you're more than we can do that now if you want.
Slavery.
You want to do that now?
With slavery, I was interested in.
You want to do that now?
I don't mind slavery. Yeah.
Okay.
Because slavery was interesting when I heard you saying slavery.
Let me wrap up my point then.
Wrap up.
Because the point is that there's a circular logic to Islam, which is that the scholars tell us that this verse of the Qur'an means this, and then you ask them, well, where is that justification in the Qur'an?
Okay.
And then the scholars point to a verse.
Right.
So the scholars are using their authority to tell you that the Qur'an tells you that they have the authority to interpret the Qur'an. And that's a circular logic. And I am yet to meet the Muslim that can show me where Muhammad gives the definitions of the 99 names of Allah. Can you show me where Muhammad tells you what Al-Warith means, where Muhammad tells you what Al-Ghaniya means? Can you show me the hadiths where Muhammad says that?
There may be some, but I'm not a hafid of hadith.
Could you maybe look some up and come back?
Well, I could.
Not right now.
Yeah,
in your own time. I'd like you to, because it seems to me that the later scholars of Islam, when they encountered Greek philosophy, particularly when they encountered Greek philosophy, it was a catalyst to the later Muslims to start developing their theology, and they did it all after Muhammad, which is bid'ah.
I mean, basic fundamentals of the religion have been expounded on by the Qur'an and by the Hadith, but no, interpolations after the Qur'an and from the Hadith have not been done by scholars.
So show me a hadith where Muhammad gives the definition of Al-Warith.
I'll look into it. I'm not gonna. I can't. Off the top. I'm not hafid of Hadith. I'm not memorized.
Because I've tried myself, and I'm not saying that I've done a perfect research, because I haven't. But I have found plenty of scholars. I found plenty of scholars that give a definition of Al-Warith, but I've never found a scholar that quotes a hadith where Muhammad gives the definition of Al-Warith.
All right, okay.
And for me, this is a problem, because Muslims are not meant to practice bid'ah, and bid'ah is doing something Muhammad never did.
It's innovated in the religion.
Yeah, and if you're inventing definitions of the titles of Allah that Muhammad didn't give.
But those names are in the Quran.
Okay,
that can't be
so show me where the Quran defines Al-Warith then.
Again, I'm not hafid of Quran. I can't.
Yeah.
Warith.
Well, Al-Warith, yes. So show me where Muhammad or the Quran tells you. Well, I've got a Quran.
No. I'll research into one that I'll bring.
Okay.
And then I'll have my own. Own version, but I can't respond to that on camera.
Yeah. Right.
Not enough research.
Now I'm cold.
No, I appreciate it. All right. It's good seeing you, and we'll have another discussion.
What's your name?
In the future. Zafar.
Zafar. That was a really nice conversation, Zafar. For people that have nice conversations with me, I always like to give them a gift. So I'd like to give you a gift, if I may.
Okay.
No, it's only a book. Don't worry. It's nothing bad. Can you read Arabic?
Yeah.
You're an Arabic speaker, yeah?
I'm not Arabic speaker. I can read it.
But you can read it. Now, when you say read, because sometimes I get this with Muslims, they say they can read Arabic, and what they mean is they can read but they don't understand. Can you read and understand
I'm
Arabic?
not fluent in my understanding.
Oh, then in that case.
I can't. What is it that?
I was going to give you a book in Arabic, but there's no point. Your English is probably better. So here's my gift to you, sir. God bless you. And yeah, it'd be nice to talk to you again.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you, sir.
So, guys, like no, they don't do that. They don't do that. The Dawah channels don't do that. They don't do that. There you go. There you go. So what you got is that Zafar pointed out something. Are you listening, Shamsi? And hopefully JC will do a cutback to what Zafar said. Zafar pointed out that
in Arabic, all Arabic words come from three triliteral roots, right?
Yeah.
So the word here
Come closer, brother, come closer.
is waratha, right?
Yeah.
Now the word warith is one of Allah's name. It's a hyperbole. It means extreme, right? Extreme form of whatever it is. And in this case, it means waratha has different meanings. I'll give you an example of where the word warith has been used. Al-ulama warathatul anbiya. This means that the scholars are inheritors of the Prophet.
So I was not lying, Shamsi. I was not lying. And the reality is that if your argument is that by calling Allah the inheritor, he is simply someone who survives, then I would point out to you that's the wrong description. Exactly. Call him the survivor rather than the inheritor. It is simply an example of the fact that the Quranic description of Allah is self-contradictory. And the Quran states that if it is self-contradictory, then it's not from Allah. So there you go. That's a wrap up.